What happens when one of Trump's loudest defenders stops defending him and starts saying the man she supported is no longer the man she campaigned for? This is not just another political interview. It is a rare moment from inside the movement itself, where loyalty collides with disappointment and the language of America first is turned back against the man who made it famous. As Marjorie Taylor Greene sits across from Christiane Amanpour, the real story is no longer just about Trump. It is about fracture, broken promises, and a movement now being forced to ask whether its leader changed, or whether the truth was always there, waiting to be seen.
There's obviously no secret, and I said that, you wore a hat at one point saying Trump was right on everything, and, you know that he's never been a beacon of moral principle. His evangelical Christian supporters admitted that. They called him an unlikely vessel, yet chosen by God for a higher purpose, i.e. that it was somewhat transactional. We'll support him, and he will help us get our Christian principles enacted into law, and you know what happened with Roe versus Wade and the other. I guess what I'm trying to say is, based on what you knew about Trump then, are you surprised that he violates Christian principles, or even what you're saying in terms of MAGA principles, America First principles now? Should you have known better?
It's very hard to explain in just a short matter of minutes. So I only knew President Trump while he was out of office. I didn't know him during my first term, as I wasn't a member of Congress then, and I became a member of Congress in January of 2021. So I campaigned for the president, and that was my relationship with him. It was after he came into office in 2025 where I started to see him differently, where he began to change and began to support issues that he was against just before that, before he became president. So that's been my personal experience. Is he going back on what many Christians want to see happen? I would say so. And again, I can just only speak for myself.
You essentially have broken with Trump, and he has, I suppose, broken with you. He does a play on words with your name, Marjorie Taylor Greene, etc. Can you explain to me what is going on, do you think? Not necessarily. First, I want to ask you why you think Trump is behaving this way, what he said about civilizational erasure in Iran, what he said about, this Jesus depiction. What do you think is going on?
Thank you for bringing that up. Just to be clear, President Trump called me a traitor because I fought to release the Epstein files, defending women who were raped at 14 and 16 years old. And I would not obey his demands of taking my name off that discharge petition. That's why he calls me a traitor. I'm not a traitor to the United States. I stand with women and stand with victims. I don't know what's going on, but I think that is the conversation that needs to be had. As a matter of fact, I think it's an extremely important conversation. Why the president of the United States wants to portray himself as God, and why he would dare even use the words wipe out an entire civilization. I think many people, not only in our country, but all across the world, are so deeply concerned and offended by that language that it is the right thing to do to be talking about it. So
we didn't mention, but you also retired or resigned from Congress, and you're not an active Congresswoman right now. I've read, in doing a lot of reading for this interview, a lot of people are trying to figure out, apart from what you say now and what you've said, what is at the heart of your gripe is the wrong way, but your disagreement with President Trump right now. And one analyst or, a political analyst said, you seem to have recognized that the president has broken faith with his own followers. Do you think that you are seeing something bigger than just what we're talking about right now, because you have been such a prominent member of the MAGA, the first, America First movement? Is there something bigger going on than just these, these quotes and these things that he puts out in public?
I'm not sure. I believe in accountability, and that's why I'm so outspoken. Many people, especially in other countries, may not know my time in Congress, I spent calling out Republicans just as frequently as I did Democrats. I believe it's incredibly important to follow through on the promises that elected leaders make to the people that elect them. After all, that's who they work for, not special interest or anyone else. But as far as President Trump is concerned, I'm not sure exactly what is going on with him, but I've been calling for people in his cabinet, the administration, and Republicans to engage in these conversations, because this is extremely concerning. This is the president of the United States who is waging an extremely concerning war in Iran that seems to be escalating. The United States is also, our ally is Israel. We are also funding them with weapons as they declare war and wage war on Lebanon and have killed many innocent people in Gaza. So I myself, as an American, not just a former member of Congress, think it's important to speak out on this and call for accountability. Accountability not for only the current direction that the president is going in, but also accountability to the promises he made the American people in 2024.
Which were no foreign wars, America first, that's the kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No more foreign wars. America first.
And also, I think on the Epstein files, didn't the president say, or during the campaign, that they were going to release all the evidence, all the files?
Yes, and that was talked about for years, not only by the president, but it was basically a blanket campaign promise for Republicans overall. And so that should have never been a fight that I had to have with President Trump. It should have been the easiest thing in the world, but instead it was the biggest fight that led to him calling me a traitor and ultimately led to me resigning, refusing to serve under a president that publicly pledged to destroy me. I thought that was incredibly unfair to my district. These are the things that have many of us concerned and has caused a giant divide among the base of people that supported President Trump.
You know, in terms of the opposition to the Iran war, you are not alone amongst MAGA. Very prominent influencers and media figures such as Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones and Candace Owens, all quite controversial, as you know, have also been accused of supporting anti-Semitic tropes or platforming anti-Semitic views. So is that an issue? Are you comfortable with the company that you keep, the anti-foreign intervention wing of the MAGA movement, also being against Israel? And I mean, what do we have just recently? We had Nick Fuentes, who had been, talked to by Tucker Carlson, saying, my problem is that, Trump isn't Hitler enough. I'm sure he was, trying to make a different point, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't answer for other people. What I can tell you, in my opinion, is it's not anti-Semitic to be against the secular government of Israel and their wars. That's not anti-Semitism. That's being anti-war. I've got a strong history of being anti-war, not just the war in Iran or against Israel's basically genocide in Gaza and what they're doing in Lebanon now. I was also against U.S. funding of Ukraine, and my voting record shows that. So I think what you're talking about when you bring up Tucker and Candace and Alex Jones and others, we're speaking out just like many Americans are, that we're tired of the United States and our tax dollars having to fund these wars. And we're tired of seeing our military serve in these wars in foreign countries, because many of them are our friends and our family members, and they come home forever changed with PTSD or in a flag-draped coffin. And we're against that. That's not anti-Semitic or hateful towards any people group. That's literally saying that we're tired of America fighting different countries' wars on their behalf. And that's what's happening in Iran.
Tell me something then, finally. Do you regret supporting Trump for president? And where do you think the movement and the country is headed? And will you position yourself to try to take, at least the Republican side back to what you believe to be the America First principles?
I don't regret what I campaigned on, because nothing about me has changed. And in 2024, when I helped President Trump get elected, he was pretty clear on what we were campaigning on. What I don't support is the man that he's turning into be, a man that is hell-bent on war and destruction, has forgotten about the American people that are struggling so much economically, and has basically gotten incredibly focused on his biggest donors and their top issues. That's what I'm against. Going forward, I'm looking past Donald Trump. I'm looking towards a future that is focused on my children's generation. They're all in their 20s. And I think that's the generation that we should be fighting for. And that's the generation that's been largely failed. So I will continue to be vocal because we have to look towards the future and how to solve those problems for the American people. And so that's where my focus lies.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, former Congresswoman, thank you very much for being with us.
In the end, this interview is about far more than a political breakup. It is about what happens when a movement built on certainty begins to fracture from within. For years, Marjorie Taylor Greene was seen as one of Donald Trump's most visible and loyal defenders, someone who did not merely support the message, but embodied it. That is why this conversation matters. Because when criticism comes from a longtime opponent, it fits the script. But when criticism comes from someone who once stood inside the circle, it creates a different kind of tension. One that audiences instinctively recognize as more dangerous, more revealing, and far harder to dismiss. What makes the opening of this video so effective is the way it frames the contradiction. Amanpour is not asking a casual question. She is pressing on something deeper. If Trump was always a controversial figure, why is this the moment of disillusionment? And Greene's answer becomes the backbone of the story. She insists that she has not changed, that Trump changed after returning to office. That single claim gives the interview its emotional center, because once a supporter says, "I stayed the same, he did not," the story immediately becomes a battle over identity, memory, and betrayal. Was the movement misled? Did the leader drift? Or are we watching a loyalist trying to preserve the ideals while rejecting the man who now represents them? Then the conversation deepens. It stops being only about image and starts becoming about conduct, Iran, the language of destroying a civilization, the self-depiction as Jesus, the accusation of traitor, the Epstein files fight. One by one, these issues pile up, and the interview begins to feel less like a standard media appearance and more like a political autopsy. Greene is not simply criticizing tone. She is questioning judgment, motives, and direction. And that shift matters for audience retention because viewers are no longer just watching disagreement. They are watching a former insider explain why the center of gravity inside the movement may be moving somewhere darker and more unstable than many supporters expected. There is also a broader ideological story underneath all of this. Greene repeatedly returns to a promise: no more foreign wars, America first, accountability to voters, and transparency on issues that animated the base. In her telling, the real divide is not personal loyalty versus disloyalty. It is promise versus betrayal. She suggests that the movement was supposed to fight for ordinary Americans, but has been redirected toward war, elite interests, and donor-driven priorities. Whether one agrees with her or not, that framing is powerful because it gives disappointed supporters a language they can use without feeling that they have abandoned the cause. They can say, "We are still here. The leader is the one who left us." And in political storytelling, that is one of the most potent and destabilizing narratives possible. The interview becomes even more telling when Amanpour challenges the kind of coalition now forming around anti-intervention politics in the MAGA world. By bringing up controversial names and difficult associations, she forces Greene to define what kind of opposition this really is. Greene's answer is blunt. Anti-war is not anti-Semitism, and opposition to foreign intervention does not automatically equal hatred. That exchange matters because it shows how the argument is evolving. This is not just about Trump as a person. It is about the future ideological shape of the right. Whether it remains centered on unconditional loyalty to a single leader, or whether it fractures into competing camps over war, religion, donor influence, and what America first is actually supposed to mean. By the final section, the interview reaches its most important emotional moment: regret. Does she regret supporting him? Greene's answer is carefully constructed. She does not regret what she campaigned on, because she says those principles were real. What she rejects is what Trump is becoming. That is a crucial ending because it leaves the audience with a conflict that is still unresolved. She is not fully renouncing the movement. She is trying to reclaim it. She is not burying the slogan. She is trying to separate it from the man. And for viewers, that creates the strongest kind of cliffhanger. Not the end of a story, but the beginning of a bigger split. So what is this video really about? It is about the moment loyalty starts asking questions. It is about what happens when political identity becomes too tangled with one person, and that person begins to move in directions that even longtime allies can no longer explain away. It is about accountability inside a movement that once demanded total unity. And maybe most of all, it is about a truth that changes politics again and again. Outsiders attacking a leader may create noise, but insiders questioning him can create doubt. And doubt, once it spreads, is far more dangerous than outrage. So if you are telling this story on YouTube, do not frame it as just another interview clip. Frame it as a warning sign from inside the machine, a moment where the movement is forced to look at itself in the mirror. Because that is what keeps audiences watching. The feeling that this is not random controversy, but a crack in something that once looked solid. And once people sense a crack, they keep watching for the break. That is where the real engagement lives, in the question that still hangs in the air after the interview ends. If even insiders are starting to turn, then what does that say about where this story goes next?